Hello, everyone, and welcome to BIH's latest event. It is Bilkent International House presents a cultural glance at the Philippines dance culture. We are hosting this event in collaboration with the Philippines Embassy, and we have with us His Excellency Ambassador Raul Hernandez, the ambassador to Turkey from Philippines. Mr. Raul has been around the world. He's been to China and in other various countries. And also, one really good thing about Mr. Raul is that it is his birthday today. So happy birthday to you, dear sir. And I hope you have a very pleasant day today. We also have with us Ms. Sheila Solas, the Attaché and Cultural Officer of the Philippine Embassy, who is the one who's made this event possible and who's been the one VH has been in contact with throughout the event. We have Third Secretary and Vice Consul Mark Benigno. I'm sorry if I messed up the pronunciation a bit, Mark. And lastly, we have Miss Dr. Leila Gonzalo, who's going to be the one who's going to give the presentation on the dance culture. And I will not take much of your time. I will hand over the floor to Mr. Raul Hernandez so that he can speak a bit about the Philippines culture and what are diplomatic ties between Philippines and Turkey, and just generally about Philippines. And then we'll proceed further on. Mr. Raul.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Daniel. Good afternoon to our distinguished guest, Professor Leilani Gonzalo of the University of the Philippines. Good afternoon as well to the students of Bilkent University. I wish to express my gratitude to Bilkent University through Professor Luca Savagno and Mr. Daniel Admani, consultant and president respectively of Bilkent International House, for agreeing to collaborate with the Philippine Embassy to hold this important cultural activity. The Philippines and Turkey have been important partners since our countries signed the Treaty of Friendship more than 71 years ago on June 13, 1949. Please allow me, therefore, to also take this occasion to celebrate the warm friendship and mutual support forged through these years and a commitment to advance our relations further for the mutual benefit of our countries and our peoples. My country, the Philippines, is home to 110 million people, comprised of 80 major ethno-linguistic groups, speaking 500 distinct dialects. 500 distinct dialects. Ours is an archipelagic country divided into 3 major geographical divisions. And these are Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, consisting of 7,641 islands. And I have one island. Maybe Professor Leilani also has one island there.
Yes.
The cultures that contribute to our national heritage are numerous and diverse. And it is in this diversity that has made our culture both richer and more profound. It forms the core value of our identity, unifies our people, and makes us proud to call ourselves Filipinos. We have more than 100 forms of folk dances in the Philippines, with geography, history, culture, and religion forming the basis of the origin and evolution. Our ancestors made use of dances as a form of expression to celebrate important occasions as gratitude for a good harvest or good health, or even as a form of prayer. It is our hope that through the Filipino dances our distinguished professor will share with you today, we can give you a glimpse of Philippine culture, which we are proud of. I am also very excited that for the first time, the embassy is holding a cultural activity designed specifically for students. By sharing our culture with you, We hope that you will gain deeper appreciation of our culture and the culture of the world around you. Through teaching about culture and interacting with people of different races, ethnicities, or backgrounds, we often find that we share a common ground. And we also often find that there's much more to share with one another than we originally imagined. It is empowering for students to see that and to understand how diverse the world is. And we believe that you don't need a Filipino background to appreciate Filipino culture. Thank you all for your presence and enjoy the rest of the evening, of the, of the activity. Mabuhay, Chok Secular.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you.
That was really riveting, and that was a bit thoughtful as well. Ms. Sheila, if you would like to proceed and introduce the professor and go on with the event.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for that very nice welcome remarks. And thank you very much also, Daniel. We are privileged to have as our resource speaker today an educator for almost 40 years and an expert in the field of Philippine cultural dance. She is a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Education, major in Physical Education, minor in English from the University of the Philippines. She earned her Master's of Physical Education, major in Recreation, also from the University of the Philippines. She got her PhD degree in 2003 on Philippine Studies, major in Society and Culture, also from the University of the Philippines. She is presently the professor of College of Human Kinetics and assumed several positions in the past, namely as Dean of College of Human Kinetics, as Director of Graduate Studies and Coordinator for the University of Athletic Association of the Philippines, as an officer in charge of the Professional Studies Department, College of Human Kinetics, as a Director of UP Filipiniana Dance Group, and as a Chairperson of Service Physical Education Department of the University of the Philippines. She even became a co-host in a radio program entitled Lab Ko ang Sports at DZUP, a campus radio station owned by the University of the Philippines. She likewise received several awards, honors, and scholarships. To name a few, as College Scholar of UP College of Education, awardee of a merit for outstanding service and dedication to the UP Filipiniana Group, participated in several programs and events abroad, like in Penang, Malaysia, Tokyo, Japan, Brunei Darussalam, Bangkok, Thailand. She was the head of delegation, UP Filipiniana Dance Group, when they joined Eurofolk 1997, who performed in London, United Kingdom, Italy, Geneva, Switzerland. She became a judge of rhythmic sportive gymnastics in Perth, Western Australia. She received Gawad Kinetica Award for Outstanding Faculty, received a Certificate of Recognition for 35 years of service in the University of the Philippines, and has participated in several conferences, workshops, and seminars from 2017 to 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, without further words, I wish to give the floor now to our resource speaker, Dr. Leilani L. Gonzalo.
Thank you, Sheila, for that introduction. Good afternoon, Ambassador Hernandez, Daniel, and all the rest of the students. It's really my pleasure and honor to join you and share with you our Philippine culture, Philippine folk dance in particular. As what you've heard, this has been my passion ever since I was a student from college, and dance has taken me to many parts of the world. So let me begin by sharing with you my slides on the Philippine folk dance, uh, and so that you will understand further. Uh, so can you? So as you see from the title, I stated here that our folk dances unite Filipinos worldwide. And as what you've heard earlier, the Philippines is the second largest archipelago in the world. And Ambassador Hernandez said that he has an island. Interestingly, my family also owns an island in Samar in particular, but unfortunately, no one wants to live in the island, so we've just neglected it. But the point is that's because of so many islands, people can own their own island. But because of all these islands, there are many indigenous communities or tribal groups or cultural communities, as we call them. Roughly, they constitute between 10 to 15% of the total population and are present in 65 of the country's 78 provinces. And their dances are based on their rituals, customs, and culture. Now, let me take you back to the definition of a folk dance. So, a folk dance generally refers to dances of a people from a particular country or geographical area. And because of this, depending on the geography, so like our tribal groups who live in the mountains have different dances compared to our tribal communities who live in the lowlands. And climate also has an effect on the dances or choices of movements, and access to other resources or everyday props, as we call it, or equipment that is available within the community. And from this picture, you can see that even in terms of their approach to a survival activity, as we call it, planting rice, there are differences in the manner of the execution of the movements. Okay, because as I said earlier, it depends on the geography. Now, when the Philippines was colonized by Spain from 1521 to 1898, the folk dances were also influenced by this period of history. And as you can see here in the picture to your left, uh, their attire is very much different from those of our indigenous communities, and also in terms of choices of props, as we call them. Now, this has affected the performance or the execution of the movements, particularly in terms of the positions of the body and the arms. So, from arms just usually hanging at the side, notice in this picture that the male is holding the female and her other arm is extended upwards. Now, this is similar to other European dances. So the position of the arms and the body, also the use of hand props like castanets. So take note of the men in the middle of the picture. They are using castanets. So the Spaniards have a version of the castanets which the Filipinos adopted. They are made of bamboo, but we click them in time to the music. And then, of course, the hats. And there are also dances which make use of the shawl and so many other props available. We also picked up dance steps
Professor?
such as the waltz, the mazurka, and the step click. So if you look at the picture on the right, so the females are executing a mazurka step, which is quite common among European folk dances.
Professor, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Your video is like a bit unclear. The presentation.
Oh, it's unclear?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I can get like Shaham Farooq to share the screen instead. He has the same presentation. And you can just
Okay.
guide him with the next screen because I think there's a problem
Okay.
with the internet or something.
All right. Okay.
I'm so
So,
sorry for this.
yes. Well, maybe it's my internet connection.
Professor, I'll be sharing my screen.
Yes, yes, please do.
We are now in Mazurka.
Mhm.
We're on the 11th slide, right?
Yep.
Yes,
the
yes.
Slide.
Um,
Okay.
There. Okay.
Sorry, Professor. Can you guys
Yes.
see my screen clearly?
Yes. Okay. So, as I said, we picked up those movements, okay, because they were performed by the Spaniards and the Filipinos who would be present during those occasions. Uh, Imitated the movements and taught it to their maybe their relatives and their friends, and eventually from that time they became part of our Philippine folk dances. Next slide, please. All right. So also the Spanish influence crossed over when it came to our manner of dressing. So this costume, as you can see in the picture, is called the Mariaclara. So it's quite elaborate. It's made up of heavy material, and the females in particular have to wear several petticoats underneath this gown. So this again was an influence of the Spaniards. And notice the male on the left side in terms of the use of the barong Tagalog and the hat, okay, as part of the costume. So that was also how this has impacted our Philippine folk dance. Next slide, please. Can Now, according to Leonor Orosa Guquinco, who is a national artist for dance in our country, she categorized our Philippine folk dances into two types. They were, next slide, we call them the dances of the indigenous tribes. So these are the dances of the tribal communities. And then, of course, the Western influence dances. Western influence, not just Spanish influence, because the Philippines was also conquered by the United States. At a certain point in time, even the British, okay, occupied our country. And with them, with their occupation, we also picked up their dances. So it was better to just say Western influence dances to describe all these dances that had a foreign influence. Next slide, please. Now, our dances can also be classified in terms of their functions. Number one being that of a legal act. So it could be considered a formal ceremony connected with marriage and funerals. So, like for instance, when during the present time, most couples here in the Philippines, when they get married, they want to hold it in church. But among tribal Filipinos, uh, a ceremony may include dancing together, whereby they are this is being witnessed by the members of the community, and it's a way by which they honor and promise each other that they will live together as husband and wife. So that's an example of it being considered a legal act. Next, it's also here is another example. We have dances for funerals. Okay, before uh, an individual is buried, for instance, there must be some sort of ceremony. So here in this picture you will see a shaman, as we call them, a babaylan in our language, native language, or a shaman in English. So there would be a certain ceremony by which they celebrate the funeral, okay, or honor the funeral. Or as in this picture on the right, sending off the warriors to battle. So they perform in the sense that they are praying to the gods, okay, to bless them so that they may be courageous when they go out into battle, and honor, okay, their God by winning. So that is an example of this function of it being a legal act. Next slide, please. Now, our dances can also emphasize the division of society and the status of the performers. So here in this picture, you will notice, okay, there is a male dancer and a female dancer performing in between bamboo poles. Now, among our Muslim tribal groups, there is a certain rule to observe that only members of the royal family can perform. So, like belonging to a particular clan, the datus as we call them, and the role of the lead performer is limited, okay, to those coming from a particular clan or a socio-economic status. In another example, in the next slide, we have, this is an example of a dance performed during our festivals, the Rigodon de Honor. And usually the performers also belong to the upper class. And this dance is also performed during whenever we have a new president and there is an induction ceremony. So in the past, only the members of the upper class can perform this dance. So that's also an example of how dance, okay, illustrates the divisions of the uh, groups, the socio-economic groups within a community. Next slide. And dance will also integrate the members of the village community and allow them to experience the feeling of togetherness in dances, which are performed only for entertainment. So there are folk dances that are performed only in particular areas of our country, And ergo, when they learn this dance, it is therefore a way by which you bond with the members of your community. So, like I come from a province. My father, in particular, comes from a province in the Visayas. So, the province of Samar, and in the Samar and Leyte area, another province, the most popular dance there, okay, is the kuracha. And whenever the music is played, the Warais, as we call their ethno-linguistic group, will perform the kuracha to show how they are members of that same community. So that's why when you learn dance and you learn the dance of your community, when you hear the music, then the uh, members of that community are motivated to perform. And there's this feeling of togetherness when you're doing the dances together. Next slide. Now, here is another example whereby the members of the community perform whenever we have our town fiestas. So we celebrate, each town has a particular date in a year whereby they celebrate the founding of the town. And one of the ways by which this celebration is done is by making the members of the community perform together. So here in this picture, you will notice that young and old are performing at the same time. So the feeling of togetherness and oneness is expressed through this performance. Next slide, Shaham. And our Philippine folk dances inspire pride among the majority of the Filipinos because of uh, all these dances that are available to us. And when we perform them, people generally are in awe of the performance. And it's very hard, as they say, to find. This is something that I experienced in the past when I traveled for those as a member of the dance group, or when I attended conferences in the past. Whenever I would say I'm a Filipino, the host would say you can either sing or dance. That is the general expectation of foreigners among Filipinos. You do one of two things. So I always choose to dance, and because we have so many dances that in particular I know how to do. Next slide, Shaham. All right, now according to Tremilios in a paper that he did in 1985, the Philippines was one of the first Asian nations to use dance as a primary means of establishing international standing and to project and promote a new, beautiful image of the Philippines around the world. In the past, the former president Marcos and his wife in particular, former First Lady Imelda Marcos, always brought a dance group with her when she traveled abroad as a way of entertaining her the audience. So it was from their point of view part of promoting, okay, the image of our country. Next slide, Shaham. So that was called the era of dance diplomacy. And it happened during the 60s on to the 70s. Next slide, Shaham. And This lady, Lucrecia Reyes Urtula, she used to be the dance director of one of the earlier dance groups, the Bayanihan Philippine National Folk Dance Company. She was named national artist. The Bayanihan was usually the dance group that accompanied our former First Lady Imelda Marcos. And after that, they had world tours year after year, and this was recognized as one way of promoting our country. And next slide, please, Shaham. So this is a picture of the Bayanihan Philippine National Folk Dance Company. And if you look at the picture, usually their dances are representative of not just the Western influence dances, but also had indigenous dances, and we had rural dances. Usually those dances performed by the peasants, and we would also have dances from our Muslim communities. Next slide. Now, there's also the Ramon Busan folkloric group. Uh, Ramon Ubusan also became a national artist for dance. He established his own dance company, and they usually focused on our indigenous dances because Mr. Ramon Ubusan happened to be an anthropologist. And so for him, it was more important, okay, to showcase the dances of the tribal communities. And next slide, please, Shaham. So we also have universities or school groups like the Philippine National University, who established their barangay dance group. That also performed in various countries. And the next slide, Shaham. And the University of the Philippines, to which I once belonged. Here, this actually in this picture, this is me. Okay, this was my first trip out of the country when I was in college. We went to Penang, Malaysia, to participate in a folklore festival. So it was an occasion for me to travel for the first time. And here we are performing at the park doing a Western influence dance. So wearing our Mariaclara gowns. Okay, next slide. So how does one learn to dance? First, you learn dance through imitation. Please click the slide, Sham. Yes. We learn dance by watching our parents, our siblings, or friends, and we follow their movements. And for most people, that is how you learn your folk dance, by imitating others. Next. The next way to learn dance is through creative movement. So an individual may be particularly talented when it comes to movement. So through spontaneity, originality, and individuality, the individual or pair move according to their personal preferences. And as you will see in this uh, next slide, Shaham. So this is an example of please go back to, back one slide, yes. Uh, Double click it, please, Shaham. Sorry, next slide, there. Double click it, so you will see the video. So this is the example of a coracha being performed during a town fiesta.
Professor, do you
And
want me to play the video?
yes, play the video,
All
please.
right, Professor, I'm playing the video. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So they're just moving with the music and moving across the floor. There's no sound. Okay, and usually in this particular dance, the host will call out, okay, the VIP guests to perform. And at a certain point in the dance towards the end, the the people watching will give money. Okay, please stop it. There must be a okay. Notice that there is a scarf or a handkerchief placed on the ground, and as they perform, the guests are expected to put money on top of the handkerchief. So as a gesture of gratitude for their performance. So the better the performance, the more money they make. And the money is donated to the organizers. So that's an example of a dance, and the performers have to be spontaneous and creative in terms of how they move. Although the basic steps are technically the same, common for all. Okay? But the better the performer, the more money is donated by the guests. Okay, on to the next slide, please. Now, dance can also be learned through the technical approach, meaning it is taught by a master teacher who follows a specific syllabus of movements for a distinct style. So we have here in this picture Ligaya Amilbangsa, who is also a national artist for dance. She studied the Pangalay. Her husband was assigned to Mindanao when he was working. And what she did was to imitate the Tausug tribe, the Tausug members, as they perform their dances. And she came out with a book entitled The Pangalay, where she documented the various execute arm and foot movements, footwork of the Tausugs for the dance the Pangalay. Next slide, please. And she has a school in Marikina, where she now currently lives, where she continues to teach this particular folk dance to the young people. So practice and repetition of movements is strictly followed. So even if they're not of the Tausug tribe, they are able to learn, okay, this distinct Tausug dance. Next slide, please. Now, dance is a physical skill. As such, there are certain principles to follow. So the body is the instrument of expression. And the reason why there must be constant practice in order to master the movements. And then there's the point also about the use of space. Because if you have a small space, then your movements have to be limited. But if you have a huge space, then you will also you have more space to move around and more movements to incorporate. Next point, Shaham. And one can also just move in place, limiting the movements to the movements of the head, the shoulder, the arms, etc., without having to use steps to move across the floor. And the reason why in some dances, the particular head movement must also be observed. And human anatomy accounts for the universality of dance movements. Because some people have remarked that some of our folk dances, particularly our indigenous folk dances from the south, from the Mindanao area, as you heard Ambassador mentioned a while ago, the third largest island in the Philippines. Their dances are also similar from dances coming from Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. It's because we have only one human body, and ergo the probability of us moving in the same way. Okay. Next slide. Now, there are also resource materials like books and CDs or online videos or YouTube where one can learn their dances. So here, this on the book on the left was written by one national artist for dance, Francisca Reyes Aquino. So she documented our Philippine folk dances and wrote several books, 6 books in particular. And here on the right, this is Ligaya Amilbangsa's book, where she has pictures of herself executing the movements so that the reader may be able to approximate her movement in terms of the bends, okay, the how you bend your elbow, your wrist, or your hips, and so on, okay, or your spine, your trunk. Next slide. And in general, one must accept and train the body. So as a dancer, one has to practice consistently because one's ability to move depends on certain anatomical features, like, for instance, the length of one's bones, the length and strength of the muscles, uh, and the structure of the joints. So similar to doing a sport, I'm sure you're familiar with how it is that there are certain body types that are good for a particular sport and so on. So it's the same for dance. There are particular body types that can perform a dance like say the tinikling, where one needs endurance and agility to be able to perform the dance. So some of these uh, abilities are necessary to be able to execute the dances. Next slide. And when our Philippine folk dances perform, so there are many social occasions. In fact, the trend is uh, to dance them uh, during birthdays, weddings in the Philippines. When there is a wedding, the couple performs a wedding dance, and the tradition is the guests will pin money on their clothes. So that's the reason why couples now include the wedding dance as a part of the program. Then Philippine Independence Day, whenever our embassies host or celebrates Philippine Independence Day, they may invite some of the Filipinos who are already residents in the area to perform. School programs, whenever we have school programs, Christmas foundation, we always have Philippine folk dances, town festivals, etc. Which dances should be performed? So many dances to choose from, and the choices are done on the basis of purpose. So what's the reason you're going to perform? Uh, Knowledge is also important, because how are you going to teach the dance if you don't know how to perform it? There's also the point on access to resources, like the tinikling. This is our famous bamboo dance. You saw the picture earlier. If this were to be done in a foreign country, it may be difficult because there are no bamboo poles in that country. So like in the United States, I heard that they have decided to use these PVC pipes in lieu of the bamboo poles. So there must be some form of adaptation with regard to access to a resource, like a prop, the availability of the prop in the area, the abilities of the dancers, and of course, preparation time, how long it takes for them to perform. Next slide, please. Now, can you click the
Professor,
video?
do you
So,
want me to play the video?
yes, please.
All right,
I
Professor.
hope there's no lag. So this is an example of a Philippine folk dance. And
The heat is on.
here you see the
Everyone is
students
excited.
preparing.
Every
They're
group is
going to
busy
join
preparing for the annual Aliwan
a
Fiesta,
festival.
an event that gathers different cultural festivals of the Philippines, organized by the Manila Broadcasting Company, together with the Cultural Center of the Philippines.
Okay, thank you. Maybe that's enough. So, in the video, actually, this is a sort of a documentary whereby the preparation for participation in a festival is shown, and the students come from various schools. They're all brought together to learn the dance, and then they compete. We call it the Aliwan Festival, and this happens in Manila during the summer months between April and May. And it's for the pride and honor of a particular province or town if they will win in this festival. So the students practice, and then they perform and compete. Okay, next slide, please. Uh, Now, the ethnic dances are difficult to perform because finding a teacher to teach it might be difficult, and there might also be some concerns about the authenticity of the movement. Next slide. Next slide, Shaham. And as stated here, there is a risk in performing ethnic dances because it may lead to some criticism by the locals or the tribal communities if they think there was a mistake in the execution of the movements. Go on, please, Shaham. And however, this appropriating cultural resources makes it visible, tangible, and more importantly, accessible to the present and future generations of Filipinos. So it's one way by which we make the younger Filipinos interested in performing the folk dance. Technic, as of the present, our younger Filipinos seem to have lost the interest in learning our folk dances because of competition from the other more modern dances like street dancing, jazz, and so on. But if they use it for as part of the theme, next slide, Shaham. So in this example, we have a hip hop group. There, play, please. A hip hop group that performed in the United States. Oh, I'm so sorry. The video is lagging. But in the performance, this is a hip hop dance. They incorporated uh, the the our famous bamboo dance, uh, and use Philippine props, okay, like fans, etc., just um, to show, okay, that it is Philippine inspired. Okay. Next slide, Shaham. We're running out of time. Thank you. Now, of course, we are now in what we call our new normal, and there are many ways by which we can still continue showcasing our dances. Next slide. So, like this event we are holding is one such example. And here in the illustration, because we now teach our classes online, our students learn from the video and then they show us a video of their performance, like in this example. And go on, Shaham. I'll just run through this. So these are examples of how we can plan dance events, beginning with creating a list of dance teachers and choreographers who could be invited and share their experiences. Uh, Go on, Shahan, next slide. And maybe also following guidelines for social distancing, we can still host small dance performances, like small parties where a couple or a solo performer can showcase the dance. Go on, Shaham. And maybe, as I mentioned earlier, contacting the local residents within the area. So here is my former student and dancer in college who currently lives in Melbourne, Australia. So what he did is, next slide, Shaham, is create a video, play please, whereby he contacted his other friends from other parts of the world uh, to do Philippine folk dances. Mm. So he himself is performing. Well, I'm so sorry. Uh, the problem with technical difficulties. So he's executing his folk dance. So this is an example from a tribal community showcasing the use of a malong, okay, from our Muslim communities. Okay, and so even his children learn our Philippine folk dances, although they are Filipino Australian. Okay, and next slide, Shaham. And there are also virtual experiences where we can host a viewing of some of our folk dances. Next slide, Shaham. So in this, well, I hope the video will play. Click, double click, please. There's did you turn on the sound, share sound?
Yes, Professor, I'll share the sound. Actually,
Oh.
the video lags when I share the sound, so that's why I was not.
Oh, okay.
But I'll try sharing the sound as well.
Okay. Okay, so like this is an example of one of our festivals, the Ati-Atihan, which happens in uh, Aklan, okay, the province of Aklan. Okay, so thank you, Shaham. So, watching these types of videos can help in terms of, if not actually being there, at least getting an idea of what some of our groups are doing. Street dance festivals are quite popular during fiestas in our country. Next slide, Shaham. And when we perform dance, we always caution our performers their physical condition because it might lead to some health problems. And maybe I will just skip this part. And I actually prepared an instructional video for the those in attendance to follow. But I think we have run out of time, Daniel. So yes, we'll just skip this part, but I will make the video available. You have a copy of it, so you can do it during your own free time and have an idea of how to perform our Philippine folk dance.
Definitely.
Yes, so I end my presentation here, and we can now have a Q&A.
Yes, we actually have like a couple of questions that have come in. By the way, if anybody else wants to send in questions, again, you can send them to me privately, or you can just unmute yourself and ask the professor or the ambassador directly. Uh, One of the questions we had was that, as you said, considering the younger generation nowadays are more into modern dance genres,
Mhm.
are there any programs in the Philippines that are directed to preserve or develop the original folk dance culture?
Yes, in fact, folk dance is part of the school curriculum. We teach it as part of physical education. So technically, the Filipino student learns it in school. But if you were to ask them to perform it on their own, they would rather do something else. So that's the problem about making our students perform. And the reason why we have folk dance groups, because that helps to keep, this interest alive. Because if not, it might, die a natural death. That is what we do not want to happen.
We thank you, Professor. I hope that answers your question. We have another question. It is that it's a very simple question actually. What is the recommended Philippine folk dance that can easily be learned and picked up by foreigners?
I often teach whenever we have foreign students, we teach them a very simple four-step combination dance, which we call the tiklos. But this is considered a Western influence dance because we use the polka step. So it's very easy. And but I included in my presentation is an instructional video on the pangalay. So this is a tribal dance from the Tausugs of Mindanao. They're a Muslim community, and it may be performed solo. So you can download the video, and since it's instructional, so it's in a way by which the steps are given, and you can follow along and perform the dance.
Thank you. We have another question coming in. It is, what are your views about Turkish cultural Turkish cultural dances, and are there any similarities in your opinion between the Turkish and Philippine folk dance movements?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not familiar at all with your Turkish folk dances. Um, so I cannot answer that question. I'm sorry. I should have done some
Ah,
research,
no.
right? So that I could have, yes, been able to uh, at least compare. Maybe I can answer that question if you by email.
Sure, definitely. I'll send forward the answer to whoever.
Yes, yes, yes.
We have another question, and so far that is the last question that we have. It is that during the current pandemic situation, like, do you feel like dance is a good medium of expressing oneself and just relax and mediate?
Definitely, it is. In fact, I always tell my students, I myself do it. All I do is turn on the radio and move my body because, you know, it takes your mind away from your problems. And as a physical educator, it is one way by which you are exercising. So instead of just being seated or lying down and thinking about the problem, just follow the music and let your body move with the music.
Definitely. I hope that answers your question to the person who asked it. I Are there any? I don't think there are any other questions, and we are also like running really short on time. So I just want to say thank you to the professor, and thank you for everyone who came in. First of all, who joined us for this event. We will definitely be sharing the instructions that you said with the other people as well, because some of them are definitely interested. Uh, but for now, I just want to thank all the participants, and you guys, if you want, you can leave. Thank you for joining. If you have sent in uh, uh, your name for the GE list, it's perfect. Your job is done now. For the Philippines, my guest from the Philippines, I would like to request you all to wait and have one final word with my team members. And also, if you have any ending remarks, Ambassador, if you have any ending remarks, you can say them right now to all of our participants.
Okay. Um, um, yes, sir.
Oh yes, thank you very much, Daniel, and for this event and for organizing with Sheila, with the embassy, this cultural promotion of the Philippines. And we are very much grateful to Professor Leilani Gonzalo, who is a Waray. I am also a Waray from South.
Oh, great.
Yes, yes. Later on, we will talk about it. But you know, we you asked about the Turkish dance, the folk dance, and I've seen you know the folk dances in Konya, and also whenever there's a party, the way the Turkish people dance, they are very I would say excellent and well performed, and it's kind of different, and but makes you identify uh, these dances to the Turkish culture. And I'm happy that I have been exposed to these folk dances, and I hope I could learn some of them, especially the whirling kind of dance. Uh, so I don't know if we have that kind of dances, but a lot of Filipino dances, moves a lot as what you Turkish people do. So thank you very much, Danielle, and the students of Bilkent uh, for your participation. And I hope you learned from this presentation of Professor Leilani. And hopefully later on, you could also make a presentation about Turkish folk dances to the Philippine students based in Manila or in UP. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, Daniel. Okay. It all started with the simple vision of sharing Philippine cultural dances with our Filipino community members until the vision expanded and reached the artistically and culturally inclined minds of Bilkent International House officials and members. In this regard, I wish to convey my sincerest gratitude to Bilkent International House, particularly to Mr. Daniel Admani, the member of the board and its official, for your time and arrangements to make this activity success. Likewise, my sincerest appreciation to our distinguished guest, Professor Leilani Gonzalo, for the interesting and informative discussion in this new normal situation. The embassy, under the leadership of Ambassador Hernandez, will continue with its cultural diplomacy initiatives and efforts to introduce, promote, and expose our country to the locals and foreign expats in Turkey and other areas of jurisdiction of the embassy despite the pandemic. When situation settles, I invite each one of you to actually experience Philippines as presented earlier by Dr. Gonzalo. As they say, it's more fun in the Philippines. Again, I wish everyone good day, keep safe, teşekkürler ederim.